Hi, Claire. How are you?
Hey, Sid, I'm fine, thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Likewise. I'm quite fascinated by your journey. So please tell me, how did your journey to therapy begin?
Okay, well, it's fair to say I think that it began on a stage.
Oh,
Um, However unlikely that would be, I kind of come from a family of teachers, but acting took, great precedence at school, and I really enjoyed it there. And it was my drama teacher. She was in the industry. She said to me at one point, I was thinking of going into forensics because I was pretty strong academically.
okay.
And she looked at me one day and she just said, I cannot see you with blood all over your hands, sitting in a dark, you know, dramatizing it. She said, but you're a performer. And something
Oh,
just clicked, and it was.
mhm.
So I informed my parents that this is what I was going to do. They weren't entirely happy, but I ended up doing an honors degree in English and drama at
Mhm.
Wits. And then, very fortunately, I had a very good 10-year career um, in all media, really, because most South African actors have to kind of do everything to make ends meet. So you're doing TV, you're doing voiceover, you're doing film, you're doing theatre. And one of the more well-known programs that I ended up doing was a kids program called Pumpkin Patch. I was the presenter. But,
Oh, okay.
having that enabled me to earn good money to be able to do theatre, which isn't as well paid or wasn't as well paid in those days. So it was a very happy 10 years of my life. I mean, you're a freelancer, but it went well. And then all my regular stuff finished. I sort of worked in these 10-year cycles. And I'd been sitting in for my agent. She'd asked me a couple of years back, and I'd looked at her and gone, why me? And she said, because I trust you. And I was like, okay. So I kind of learned the agenting ropes, but always said to her, don't ever, ask me to do this full time or be an assistant or anyway, time went on and her one assistant was leaving and she said to me, you know that I would ask you, but you've got this and that and the other. And I said, yes. And I drove home that day and it was sheer gut feel. And I do work very intuitively. Um, that went, that's the next step. And that's actually what I need to do. So I went to see her. She was quite puzzled. And I said to her, I think it just feels right. And that was the next 10 years of my life. Um, it was a big 10 years. I bought the company out 3 years into working for her, myself and a partner. And then I was elected chair of the body of agents South Africa called the
Mhm.
PMA. So I did a lot of legal work, a lot of training of them, as well as, running my own shop. And it truly was, I think, a combination of two things that got me into the therapy side. And the one was I'd been managing people for 10 years. I'd given up performing. So there was that. And they say if you can manage actors, you can manage anybody.
Mm.
But it became something I found out that I was actually very good at and I really enjoyed. And then I went on a rather life-changing course, nothing to do with anything but a boy. It's always a boy, you know what I mean. And in that course, it started coming up about the abilities I had and the direction my life possibly could take. And it grabbed me and I jumped, sold my shares, jumped, started studying again, really wanted to look at becoming a coach more than anything, but it was the counseling work that found me. So that's really, in a nutshell, how I ended up on the therapy side. And I've been there for 20 years now.
Wow.
Worked as counselor, coach, trainer, mentor, and still taught a little bit of voice work and stuff along the way. But by and large, my work has all been in the mental health field. So that's how it came about.
So who are the people that you look up to in the spaces that you've been into? Been in, I mean.
The first answer I'm going to give you is slightly unusual, but
Mm-hmm.
the people I really look up to are my clients or the clients, because it takes a huge amount of courage to confront your stuff, own that you need help,
Mm-hmm.
and go and see somebody and really work that process to help yourself and possibly change yourself. A lot of people avoid it completely because they think they think it's completely scary, and it's not. You know, if you work with someone and you have that support, it is actually very easy and rather wonderful to change things about yourself. So the people I look up to hugely are actually my clients. And in the bigger space, and the much bigger space now I'm talking the healing space, not just coaching and counseling and training, although she did a lot of this, is a lady called Louise Hay. She brought in very new concept. She's dead now. To the healing field, very much about how much your body is linked to your thoughts, your emotions, and how much bodily illness is often caused by backed up emotion or trauma that isn't processed. She was a big pioneer in her field, and I work very much along those lines. And I also admire her pioneering spirit. She brought it in as new stuff. She did all the work. She did the counseling. She ran around bookshops, issuing them with prints of the books she's written. And suddenly at 60, she became huge. So she is someone, I think, who was extremely valuable in the field. So, you know, people also who start endeavors, who don't just sit back and go, okay, well, you know, you as client, I'm sorry you're feeling more depressed. So go back and see your psychiatrist and let's just get you on more meds. And the client's saying, but I don't want to be on more meds. Oh, well, that's the way it is. That's not what I look up to. What I look up to is finding resources, finding the ways, even if it's new stuff, to really give your client what they need, you know?
Okay, so what have been your highlights thus far?
Well, I'd say firstly, the reward of changing lives. I don't think there's anything I've ever done, and that's including acting, that has ever given me such big reward as being able to help people on the level that one can,
Mm-hmm.
and also see a life changing from the work that you've done with the person. So that for me is a huge highlight. Another highlight was being student counselor at a college,
Oh.
because there is nothing that you can avoid. You have to do everything. If you're at a college and let's say your kids don't have the resources to go and see psychologists or other counselors because they have a counselor on board at campus, they come to you for everything. So you'd be dealing with study skills to pregnancy to rape to I'm scared of my exams to this. You get the variety of stuff that grew me as a counselor that I don't think I would have got that experience anywhere else. So that was a true highlight. Also being head of life coaching at a company, or head
Mm-hmm.
life coach at a company, that was a great highlight. I can't say the company was fantastic, but the work, that's where I learned to train and write up all my own trainings, and the start of inventing my own work to customize, say, for companies. And I really enjoyed, I think my performer side came out when, you know, when you're training a room of 40, 50 people, and really enjoyed that. So that was definitely a highlight. Corporate training, yeah, that was something I enjoyed hugely. And then, of course, 2019 finished. There was a lot of corporate work in that time, and 2020 and lockdown arrived. And I suppose in hindsight, you could say it was a highlight because I started getting personal clients on a rather severe mental health level.
Mm-hmm.
And through a lot of work with them and through a lot of research, and it's been 5 years now, I started understanding the sources of very tough mental illnesses like bipolar, like ADHD. like, let's say, body dysmorphia, like anxiety, depression, etc., etc. And I started working out new ways of treating them and testing this. And that's how this whole modality of mine came about, called frequency balance. I trademarked it in 2022, and it is both a diagnostic and a curative tool. And I use it with, pretty severe mental health cases. I closed my practice last year. Not a highlight because it was very sad. But what I've gone on to do now is take frequency balance and put it out there and teach it, and also look at training therapists, with it. So I think let's just call it the innovation of this has been, it's been bewildering and quite stressful, but definitely a highlight.
Any lowlights, if any?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. There have been plenty of lowlights, as you go along in life. I wanted to give this one as an example because it's just, I think, an example of how you can take a low light, and turn it around. Apart from fatigue, which is one of my biggest lowlights, because you get very energetically drained by some of the work you do. I have found, not emotionally drained, you get used to dealing with the tough stuff, but boy, it chews energy. In terms of an event, a retrenchment, one of the companies I worked at, I was retrenched from. It was unexpected. It was very badly handled. It left me in huge shock. And it happened at the same time that we moved my childhood home of 46 years. So it all just happened at once, one fine year. And that was difficult to come back from because I knew I needed a break. It was actually quite good, and you get all your payments and everything. But the way it was handled was not good. So the shock factor was quite bad. But a couple of years later, I realized how many people go through very bad retrenchments. So I decided to do something about it. So I put talks together. I went on 702. I was on Azania's show a couple of times, advertising it. And I had a lot of people come to me for talks and for coaching on how to handle retrenchment. So it made sense to me to take that low light and turn it into something to help people, because after all, that's what we therapists do.
Okay, so what are your future plans for the rest of this year and beyond?
Teach, 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 and teach. And then teach some more. Teach people who suffer from the tough mental health issues like bipolar, ADHD, etc. Train therapists to use my methods because I've, in research, proved them to be very successful. And it gives a very different take on mental health, which is good. It's new and fresh, and it needs to get out there. So I'll be doing a lot of teaching. Courses mainly. I'm busy with one now. I'm busy on a 7-class course. I'll be doing class 2 on Sunday. I've actually got a beautiful mixture of therapists and sufferers, in inverted commas. So we're having a lovely perspective on, both sides of a mental health issue. And then speak, and speak. Speak at conferences, speak on forums like yours. I did a podcast with someone in the UK the other day. I'm setting up a meeting with someone else who wants to engage on some stuff next week so that I get the system out there. So that really is the goal for the year, but to pace myself doing it so we don't end up exhausted. And, eventually I would like this modality to be used in recovery centers to help the people there. I facilitated at recovery centers, and I think it would make a huge difference. So, yeah, 2025 and on.
Okay, finally, what are your words of inspiration for upcoming therapists and people that are, and also for productions like the Pumpkin Patch, for people who want to get into those kind of spaces as well?
Sure. Okay. I'll have to go back. I used to run workshops for actors on exactly that. Let me go. I'll go actors first, and then I'll finish off with therapy. Inspiration or advice? Sound advice to any actors, because I was an agent for a long time as well.
Wow.
Don't think that you necessarily are just going to get into the industry. It is, you're up against, so if you want to be an actor, my advice is that you need to study. There's not many agents in the country, unless they're extras agents, who will take you as a serious professional actor if you haven't been trained. And they do prefer degrees. I'm still in touch with some of the agents because I was one for that long and I chaired the body. So I ran a lot of workshops at colleges and privately for actors talking about the industry. And someone came to me a while ago for a little bit of voiceover work. She'd never done it in her life. I think once she heard what the professionals are capable of, it put her off. So if you're going to work in this industry, train. You do need an agent to get in there. There is work going on there, but the professional actors are out of work a lot of the time. So what I always used to say to people walking into my agency off the street was, yeah, okay, you might have talent, but I could walk into a lawyer's office and go, I do a lot of legal work as an agent. I think today, would you mind if I joined your office and I was just a lawyer? Same thing. Don't know why people think that just, sort of actors, it just sort of happens, or I think I'm talented or whatever. It's a training like anything else. It's a skill, that you need to learn. So that might be more advice based than inspirational, but I prefer to give solid, honest advice. And on the therapy side, this is the advice that I would give to any therapist joining the field. Don't be scared to think out of the box. Don't be scared to give your client what you know your client needs, even if it isn't in a textbook. Don't be scared, and don't underestimate the amount of power that your client has to work through their issues with you helping. People should not become therapy and made dependent. They need to take ownership of their issues and be part of the process as well. And that is the most honest advice I could give anyone as a therapist, saying, always factor that in,
Okay, all I got to say is thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to future chats with you.
It's a pleasure. I would happily do them again. So thank you so much for asking me.
Welcome.
Take care. We'll see each
You
other
too.
soon.